Hello, great people. The unjust killing of about 200 persons in Benue State is gaining global attention as the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, has strongly condemned the heinous crime and has mandated the government of Bola Tinubu to investigate the crime and bring the perpetrators to justice. Will the government of Bola Tinubu do as mandated by the United Nations? And if the government fails, what is the implication of this on the government and people of Nigeria? Does the United Nations truly care about what is going on in the global south, particularly in Nigeria, and what is the politics of intervention by international organizations, particularly the Bretton Woods institution? What is going on in Benue State, and what are the dynamics that is shaping the crime being perpetrated by insurgents in the state and the reaction of the Nigerian government? And what is the hope of the ordinary people in Benue State, and how can the United Nations help the people of Nigeria in that regard? We'll be dissecting all this and a whole lot more on this episode with your show blog, Dr. Omoshola Deji. Before I proceed, I think I need to acknowledge and give shout out to two people, and to also give some kudos to those behind the evolution of social media, in the sense that if there is no social media, perhaps this heinous crime that was committed in Benue State wouldn't have gotten to the United Nations. So kudos to those that conceived the idea of social media and made it a reality. And also, we must give shout out to Pope Leo and Very Dark Man. Pope Leo, if he hadn't addressed that particular massacre of Benue State during his mass in Rome, perhaps the Nigerian government would have feigned ignorance and would have just kept quiet. But for the personnel of the Pope to have mentioned it, definitely it gave it global attention. And also, we must give adequate shout out to Very Dark Man. Kudos to him. The man really tried, in the sense that he went all out, he risked his life. Sincerely, if Very Dark Man had not gone to Benue State to make that particular video, to give it a publicity, definitely the Benue people that don't have a voice would have just suffered in silence. So kudos to Very Dark Man in that regard. And that is why I said that it would be great if Nigeria have maybe like Very White Man, Very Yellow Man, Very Blue Man, and Very Purple Man. And we should have them as activists advocating for the right of the Nigerian people, giving voice to the voiceless. So adequate shout out must be given to Very Dark Man. Now, back to the United Nations. You see, if the UN understands the local politics of Nigeria, they would have included it in their statement, which is that they would have warned Bola Tinubu to focus on governance and play less politics. In the sense that, you see, Nigeria has a lot of challenges, and the UN is also aware of that. So the UN could have looked into the local politics of Nigeria. They will know that the government of Bola Tinubu have largely been focusing on 2027 and less of governance. In the history of Nigeria, particularly since 1999, this is the first time that the politics of re-electioneering will be occurring very fast. And you will wonder that what is making the president afraid? You are already in power, so how will you campaign, endorsement, alignment, and realignment for 2027? How would it have started in 2025? So it shows that the government of Bola Tinubu is about power, is power oriented, and the more a government is about power, definitely they won't have time to govern adequately, because their focus will be on how to retain that power. So the UN should have advised President Bola Tinubu to focus less on politics and improve his performance on governance. And also, it would have been interesting if the United Nations go beyond condemnation and perhaps maybe set up an investigative tribunal to kind of like inquire into the killings in Benue State and sanction Nigerian government if its officials are complicit. Because if you look at it, the killing is one too many, and if these killings evolve, the government would only issue statement, and they would do the initial gragra, and that would be the end of it. So it would be good if the UN can do its own independent investigation and look into the angle of the Nigerian government, the Nigerian police, the Nigerian military, the local people, the bordering countries around Nigeria, Niger, Cameroon, and all that. They should investigate it and make sure that appropriate sanctions is meted out to people that are involved. In the sense that, let us imagine it, 200 people, about 200 people were massacred, and the killers will go into their house with keg of petrol, pour the petrol inside, and set it ablaze. And they even burnt babies. You can imagine that. Babies were born to death. So you can imagine the level of wickedness that is gaining ground in Nigeria. Now, let us go to the international dynamics of the United Nations intervention, which is that does UN really care in the true sense of it? Does the United Nations and other international organizations like the Bretton Woods institutions, which is the World Bank and IMF, do they really care about what is happening in third world country, or if you like, you can call it the global south? Do they really care? Well, to my mind, I don't think they really care much as they should be, in the sense that we can't fail to acknowledge the hypocrisy of the UN and other Bretton Woods institutions, in the sense that they don't act against leaders that are doing their bidding. The UN and other international organizations, they don't act against leaders that do their bidding. And I'll give you an example. There was a time, I think it was Chad, that an election was conducted, and the election was greeted with so much violence. But because the president that won that re-election, it was a re-election, was a Western puppet, the United Nations and other international organizations, even the United States, did not say anything. Not until the military now took over the reign of that government. So we can't fail to point out the hypocrisy of the UN and Bretton Woods institution when it comes to matters of the global south. What we just hear is that, statements like, we strongly condemn, we sympathize, our condolences goes to, I think the people of Africa are kind of like displeased with this. They need more action from some of these organizations, in the sense that some of these African countries, their population cannot speak. They will be silenced. For instance, in Nigeria, if you protest or if you speak too much, definitely the security agencies will come against you. Then the attack dogs of the government will come against you. So the people that are vulnerable sometimes are looking forward to the intervention of the United Nations. Imagine people that are helpless in Benue State. If the United Nations can interface with the Nigerian government and bring true succor to that people, then the United Nations would have given hope to those that truly needs the hope, rather than aligning with the government of the global south, nations in the global south, to make the countries dry. So we need true intervention, not the one on the surface. So the United Nations and other Bretton Woods institutions and other Western nations, they mainly care about their interests and assets. You see, whatever happens in Nigeria, so long as the interest of the United Nations is not affected, so long that the assets of the United Nations, the World Bank, the IMF, the United States, the UK, the Germany, the France, and all these Western countries, so long as their interest and asset is not affected, definitely they won't put Nigerian government under pressure. And I'll give you an example. This killing has been going on for years in Benue State, but then there has been no much pressure from the international community. But in Ogoniland, when Ken Saro-Wiwa was advocating that Shell should kind of like look into the environmental impact assessment of his operation in Ogoniland, definitely Shell put pressure. The UK government, the Netherlands government, they put pressure on the government of Sonny Abacha at that time, and that was what led to the execution of Ken Saro-Wiwa. Just to give you an example, and I can give you 10 different examples from different countries, but for want of time, let me just stay on that of Ken Saro-Wiwa. So the United Nations and other Western institutions and organizations, they mainly care about their interests and their assets. They mainly act when their interest and asset is under threat. So we need to be very, very careful in Nigeria, in the sense that sometimes all these international organizations, they will do as if they are helping us, but in the true sense of it, they are not really helping. But can they really help? Yes, these international organizations can help, because they are the ones that Nigerian government still have a bit of fear for. But if it is about the ordinary Nigerians, the Nigerian government doesn't care, and they believe that they can always unleash the power of the state, the power of the police, the military, the DSS on the citizenry. Now, what will happen if President Bola Tinubu fail to apprehend the killers? Well, apparently it depends on his relationship with the United Nations. If he is a puppet of the United Nations, if he is an asset of the CIA in the United States, at the end of the day, definitely nothing and absolutely nothing will happen to Bola Tinubu. But then the primary purpose of government is the protection of life and properties, and Nigeria we always remember any government that is good, and they also remember the ones that is bad. So definitely it is a failure of government, and there's no excuse for it if over 200 people can be massacred and till now there's no major arrest. So those people, when they finish that perpetrating that heinous crime, did they bury themselves in the soil? Are they not still existing on the surface of the earth? So the Nigerian government couldn't even track it. And do we even need the United Nations to intervene? Do we need a very dark man to go into Benue State, to publicize it? And that talks about the complicity of the Nigerian press, in the sense that the Nigerian media, they place less emphasis on this thing. If not for very dark man and Pope Leo and the evolution of social media, definitely, those about 200 people would have just died in vain. But then again, what is the lasting solution? Will this happen again? Yes. And the reason is that Nigerian government is always kind of like reacting instead of being proactive. So at the end of the day, give it just a pace of maybe like 1 month, 2 months, you may hear that, oh, another round of people have been massacred in Benue State. So it would be great if the government lives up to its responsibility. But do I believe in the United Nations to bring in some adequate intervention? Yes, I believe in the capacity of the United Nations. But will they do it? Apparently, no. What will determine that is if Bola Tinubu is doing their bidding or not, and what will determine that is whether their asset and interest is affected or not, and what will determine that is Bola Tinubu's relationship with them. If Bola Tinubu is an asset of the CIA, definitely at the end of the day, nothing will happen. I wish the people of Benue State the best, and I wish them God's protection. It's been an interesting time with you on this episode of Politics with your blog, Dr. Omosoladeji. Subscribe, turn on your notification button, catch up with my past videos. See you in my next video. I love you all sincerely.